Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye is covering the 2014 elections. We're on the campus of North Central Tech College in Wausau. We're interviewing Mr. Norbert Salamonski of Marshfield. He's a Democratic candidate in the 69th Assembly District. Norb, welcome to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Programming note, Wisconsin Eye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. Norb, you're a first-time candidate, and I kind of have a tradition for first-time candidates to give them a chance to give a short version of their bio and talk about issues that brought them into the race for the Assembly.
Okay. I'm a pharmacist, been a pharmacist for 32 years. Worked both hospital, community pharmacy, worked with all kinds of government regulations, working with people on a everyday basis. I've been married for 34 years. We've raised, my wife Julie is a special education teacher in the Marshfield School District, and we raised 3 boys, Michael, Alec, and Matt, who are now all out of the house and have jobs. I got involved in the race through Amy Sue Verwink. She has known me for several years, primarily through the Boy Scouts. And she understands my passion and my caring for health care. And truthfully, in this state, health care has really taken a turn for the worst. The decision to not accept the ACA Act and the $2 billion definitely has adverse effect on health care. We now have 63,000 people who used to have health care in this state, either unable to afford, cannot find, or not willing to purchase health care insurance. Along that same line, if you go across state lines to Minnesota, Minnesota pays 50% less than we do for the same insurance. That is a fact. To put it another way, we in Wisconsin are paying 100% more every month for our health care premiums than they do in Minnesota. So that, and the fact that school funding continues to decrease to the point of where only Alabama has cut more money from school funding, concerns me greatly.
Well, let's talk about health care first. As you're well aware, 1 in 5 Wisconsin residents get their health care through our Medicaid program. The American Hospital Association rates our reimbursement rates for MA as second lowest in the nation. Is it time to raise those rates?
Well, let's look at the scenario that we have here. By not accepting the Affordable Care Act and the $2 billion, what Governor Walker stated was, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this on our own. So what he did was he decided, okay, with the Affordable Care Act, people that were up to 133% of the poverty level would have coverage.
Which he argues provided coverage to an additional 99,000.
So what he did was he cut those people off. That is a fact.
He cut 66 off.
Right.
But and he says he added 99.
And so what he did was he went and he covered more people at or below the poverty level.
Yes, sir.
However, there are only 2 ways that you save money if you're funding health care. One is you either cut people off of enrollment or you decrease reimbursement. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where both things have happened, and because of decreased reimbursement, hospitals, clinics, physicians' offices are all having revenue shortfalls, which also kind of dovetails into the fact that the insurance that's being offered in the state is basically high deductible, high premium insurance. The specific example I want to cite is I have a customer who comes to me. He's making $20 an hour. He's paying $800 a month for his health insurance for him and his wife. Now that is a very high premium. Here's the worst part about it. His premium, or his deductible on that premium, is $10,000. There is no way that that person can utilize that insurance unless it's catastrophic.
Okay.
The Wisconsin Commission on Insurance has not thrown out any rate hikes by any insurance company in the state. They continually approve them. And really, states that have a more robust review of insurance rates have much more competitive rates so that people can do the right thing. This now goes down the continuum because there's these shortfalls in utilization of health care. All these hospitals are having trouble meeting the revenue goals, so they now have layoffs, they have shortened hours, they limit care. It is a perfect storm for even a further disaster than we have.
And now I want to return to what you say is your second most important issue. The 69th is largely a rural district. Talk to me about, you recently did an article on the plight of rural schools. Talk to me about how to fix those rural schools, sir.
Last year there was a bipartisan task force that was put together in the legislature.
Speaker's task force?
Yep. It was a great move, task force on rural schools. Bipartisan issues came up, and they were agreed upon. They identified 10, 11 issues that would go to improve rural school funding and meet the needs of rural schools. In fact, there was a bill, and so what happened is, in fact, there was a bill that Representative Clark and Representative Wright proposed that specifically addressed 3 of those issues in that task force that would solve some of these short-term problems. Unfortunately, the bill never got out of committee, and that's the real issue here. We have a situation where that the Republicans want to have special interest. They're interested in privatizing education and do not feel that the mandate to provide a good quality education for everyone in the state is not important. Because they decide to do this and they have an agenda, rural schools continue to be underfunded. And it's to the point now where some rural school districts are running at about 100% deficit. I believe the guideline is at 150% deficit. The school a third party comes in to take over the school district.
Okay.
I am not sure that as a community we want to give up our schools. Those schools are a center of that community.
Well, it sounds to me like you just said you do not support the voucher or the choice program, correct, Norb?
I do not. The voucher program in and of itself has no type of where you look at results. There's
accountability?
Yeah, thank you. No accountability. It is basically a program to help 1,000 students, for example. Well, why are we spending so much time on 1,000 students? Aren't the other 10,000s of rural students important as well? It seems to me that the agenda is that, oh yeah, you'll hear the Republican-led legislature talk about it's about the children. But is it really about all children, or is it about specific children? They continue to look at that as being the answer. But in my district, vouchers bring no reward back to the district at all. There's no financial incentive. There are really no schools that take any benefit from it. And it seems that the higher the poverty level, the less chance you are at getting a voucher.
Okay, and then the final question on this issue, because I've got some other subjects.
Sure.
This summer, the governor, as you're aware, asked that Wisconsin withdraw from the Common Core standards. Your position?
The Common Core standards is an interesting situation because when it first was developed, it was actually endorsed by people like Chris Christie and Jeb Bush originally. It seemed to all of a sudden become a very bad program when the federal government got involved and said, yeah, we like this program, we're going to go ahead and do this. A lot of the things about core seem to be circled more around conspiracy or control than actual meaningful measurements. In the state of Wisconsin here, we now have teacher accountability and stuff for the first year where teachers are being evaluated and things. So there are a lot of good standards that occur. I think the question is that we have to make sure that we're not teaching to the test, which in actuality can happen with any education system, but that the standards, what happens with Common Core is they tell you what the standards are. They're not telling you how to teach those standards. So I think a lot of people are confusing the standard with this is what's being taught. How it's being taught is up to the individual teacher.
Transportation funding. There are projections that will be $600 million to $700 million short in the next two-year budget cycle. How would you fix that deficit?
The transportation budget has been a disaster for a number of years. We have used the monies in the transportation budget to balance the general revenue fund. More and more projects happen to be going to bonding versus actual cash expense. On top of that, we have a case of where we have people driving less miles, more fuel-efficient vehicles. All of that is occurring to decrease revenues. First thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we're not using the revenues that are in that transportation budget for anything other than transportation. That's the first thing. And if we cannot change the formula for that and find a way of doing that, we need to look at how that's going to be funded, because across the next 10 years, it looks like they could have as much as a $7 billion deficit.
That's right. Would you consider raising the gas tax, which hasn't been increased since 2006, or the $75 you and I pay for license plate fees that hasn't been raised since 2008?
I'm not in favor of raising the license plate fees. I think that would be the least place I would look for it. The formula for gas tax has been around since 1993. It's a 20-year-old formula. There is a lot of information going on where, for example, the state of Oregon is looking at a new program where you report miles driven, and it's actually those who drive pay, those who don't drive don't pay. A pilot program that's being sponsored out there that the NTSB is looking at. It's interesting to see how they're going to handle that. End user use in this state, probably as far as it goes to big business, is going to be an uphill battle. The Republican-led legislature does not want to do anything that will affect businesses. And as a matter of fact, just to bring up the transportation budget again, there are roads in the state that are on a 30-year cycle for maintenance because the transportation budget has been gutted so bad. Yet, in the same voice, the Republican-led legislature wants to increase the weight limits on the road, which will even more quickly deteriorate the roads.
The bill to legalize medical marijuana will be reintroduced. Now we have the states of Colorado and Washington legalizing the recreational use of marijuana. As a pharmacist, well, what's your position on both issues?
Sure. As far as it goes for medical marijuana, I believe that at some point in my career I will be dispensing medical marijuana. It's a conclusion that I came to several years ago. Marijuana used to be under the auspices of the ATF. It was changed and rolled over to the FDA, which was the first step to look at it. There are a number of studies out there that talk about the improvement in quality of life at end-stage cancer, things like that. My guess would be is that is where we're going to start looking at being able to dispense medical marijuana.
Okay.
Some of the other products that are out there that are what are called synthetic marijuanas don't necessarily work as well, at least in some of the literature that has been published for improving the quality of life in patients.
What about the recreational issue? I
think that's going to be solely a public constituency-driven situation.
Okay.
If the constituency wants it and demands it, I think that's going to go a long way to seriously looking at it. A lot of states are looking at Colorado, for example, because it's a cash cow. I mean, there's a lot of revenue being dispensed on that. But there are a lot of laws that conflict usage. Illinois last year passed the use of medical marijuana. However, it's legal statewide, but it's not federal. So if you happen to be a federal employer working in Chicago, you get tested, you can be penalized for that.
Okay. It's an old issue, but it always comes up. First offense drunken driving. Should it be a crime in Wisconsin, Norb? We
need to look at that again. We're the only state that does not treat it as a crime. Out of all 50 states, we are the only state that does not treat it. There have been rules that were put in to make it not. Well, the rules were put in so that the DA and other people could punish more types of more serious crimes. And then they put in penalties that hopefully would make it worse to do that. I think the route we need to look at is look at what those penalties are. That those penalties may need to be reevaluated and see if they really do have the sting that we hope they do.
About 2 weeks ago, Governor Walker announced that if he's reelected, he'll push to drug test someone who receives unemployment benefits and food stamps. Your position on that?
I think that's probably why limit it just to someone on a program like that? Are we going to do any public employee? Are we going to do school teachers that are public employees? I'm not sure his, particular focus on just that segment of our population. The governor seems to have an issue with people who are at the poverty level or slightly above the poverty level. These people need a lot of help. They don't need a lot of hindrances. Okay. And they are good people.
Finally, do you want to highlight differences between you and your opponent on November 4, sir?
I think you'll find that my opponent will tell you exactly the opposite of what I'm saying. He'll say the state is in fine shape, that the budget is, the budget has been balanced, we're doing a very good job. If that was really true, why are we talking about the next 2-year budget already having somewhere between a $640 million and a $1.8 billion deficit? What is happening is that in the last budget, they decided that they were going to go ahead and balance the budget through cost containment. But they weren't able to increase the revenues. Unless we can increase the revenues, we will have a budget deficit. So he's going to talk about how we've balanced the budget, but in the process, we've also, all our reserves have been being used to pay down current bills. He'll also talk about how it's, about the children and how it always matters about people. But the true purpose is that if you look at people in the 69th District, they're not necessarily better off. They're paying huge premiums for health insurance. School districts are not getting properly funded. He supports a voucher program that does not bring any benefit to the 69th District at all. If you're happy with the way the government is, then he's your choice. But if you want to have school districts that are properly funded, if you want to have health insurance premiums that you can use and utilize, if you want to have your transportation budget balanced in the proper way, then I would be your candidate.
Thank you. Norbert Salamonski of Marshfield is a Democratic candidate in the 69th Assembly District. The election is November 4. Norb, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you.